Hello, this is Papanikolis. Welcome to the podcast. On this episode, Rogue will try to scratch the pain of the mighty Oleg. Who is Oleg? Good question, because we will find soon.
Hi there everyone, and welcome to the debut of World of Warships podcast. I'm your host, RoguePLC, and introducing our guest, an esteemed guest from Wargaming, is the Player Interactions Manager, Phil, as known by the community as Philigula.
All good, not so cold here in Russia. Hoping you guys have great evenings, hoping you are full of hopes for 2021, as am I. Let's do it.
Welcome to the podcast, and we are honored to have you with us and join us today. How did you start your career up until now that you have been working with Wargaming?
That was actually completely random. I used to work at a hotel. I used to be one of the night shift leaders, basically dealing with whatever happens during the night shift, like administration stuff. Not very exciting, although sometimes it was. But I'm not. I'm not actually able to share any of the spicier stories. But I was working there, and Sub Octavian, the other Phil from World of Warships PC, he called me one day and said that they're looking for a person with English skills. And he knew me, and supposedly I had those English skills. We had an interview, and that's how I started working for Wargaming. I was a part of the global player interaction team for the PC, and about 6 months in, I was transferred to consoles when it was all still a secret. And we went from there. Some people remember me from the alpha test, some people don't. I appeared in a few streams back in the day. My day-to-day tasks are mostly trying to be a balancing act between players and development, asking development to bring some features faster or slower, and making sure that you guys know what we're working on, making sure that the development knows what the players are looking for, making sure that they are aware of the community sentiment, how you guys feel about any of our novelties, or balancing decisions, or new game modes, etc. I do sometimes advise on new features. I do not design anything. I have some original ideas. I don't think they are particularly sane, especially for our game. So I'm mostly a mediator between development and the player base. Although I do interact less and less directly with the players, sadly, because there's quite a few administrative stuff to take care of.
What is the difference, or how much more difficult is it between getting an update out on PC versus that of the console?
Well, it's hard to compare, to be honest, because oftentimes PC game would have more features, if only for the fact that they just have quite a big team, a few times bigger than ours. However, they have their own servers, so they don't have to pass any certification, and for example, hotfixes are really easy. Well, they're not easy sometimes to find the fault. But once you have a fix, you can just push it to server once you pass your internal QA, which is quality assurance. For us, any and all changes need to go through the platforms, Microsoft and Sony. So important point is not to screw up the first time, which we admittedly don't always get. But anything emergency, a lot of cogs, a lot of gears have to be turned to actually have a substantial change on the server. So I don't know, it's hard to say. They have to mobilize more people inside the studio. We have to rely more on people outside the studio, even if our team is smaller and in some ways swifter. And answering your question, I cannot give you a direct comparison, unfortunately.
With the occasional bug existing in the game, what measures or pre-measures testing do Wargaming have in place before an update goes live?
Usually depends on how bad the thing is. As you know, there are a few aiming bugs, like your reticle jumping uncontrollably upwards, or I don't know, not refusing to catch the target you're focusing on. We get that it's absolutely distracting and annoying. However, with a few aiming bugs, we had big troubles trying to reproduce them. So oftentimes it depends on how much it actually breaks your gaming process, how much it breaks your immersion, if we can speak of immersion, and whether it affects a big number of players. So if you remember, maybe you don't, like a year and a half ago, we've had a change of capping areas timers. It wasn't very significant, but that led to games being so-called turbo battles. That's what we called in Russian, at least. Basically ended in 5 minutes. And that was actually a prototype that wasn't initially supposed to go with that update. Thankfully, we've had the stop lever, which we could just pull, so we were done with it in 2 days. That particular thing, though, was easier because it's just server side. It's not something we have to deliver to the user. So we don't have to check it with anyone. Those kinds of rules we can actually change sometimes pretty quickly. But if it's like a texture bug, I don't know. If you remember, there were a few occasions where Bismarck in particular, although it could happen to any ship, only showed the outer parts of the model. You didn't see the hull. You didn't see the guns. It was just the masts and anything connected to masts. That one was a tough one to crack, but a couple of people worked some overtime. They got it, I think, in a week. However, those kinds of cases, it can take us a couple of months to implement, because usually the process is such that we are done with the update a few weeks before it actually hits their servers, because quality assurance takes a lot of time, both internal and external. But we have our shortcuts if anything needs to be fixed in emergency. Thankfully, I don't think we had anything too bad lately. A couple hiccups with missions, which turned out beneficial for most players because they could earn more currency or more items. We're trying to be lenient in all those cases. If we screwed up, you get to keep the stuff because you have to play more. I think that's only fair. And I went on tangent. Sorry.
So it's a combined effort, not just from Wargaming staff, the super testers as well, and the community too, as a whole, to identify these bugs.
Yeah, sometimes we rally the troops, specifically the boob troops, as in super testers, to give us some extra data on some particularly annoying bugs, and it helps. It doesn't always help, but I think 8 times out of 10, thankfully.
Yes, that's true, Phil. I remember the bugs that existed with the Bismarck, way back in the day, especially with the ghost shells, where we did extensive testing when I was still in super testing. And you guys actually fixed those problems or those bugs, within a week or two. It was sorted out by you guys.
Thank you, and we actually have to thank the players because they made it a good habit of actually reporting the bugs, and we are doing sweeps pretty much every day, sometimes every second day, unless we see that there's an emergency, and we always improve our bug catalog. Thankfully, currently it shrinks faster than it fattens, and we hope it will stay like that. But yeah, thanks to everyone who reports bugs on Discord, Facebook, Reddit, wherever you are. I don't know, even Instagram. If you give us a good report, if you give us a link to a video, that helps tremendously.
Oh, for sure, Phil. That's one thing I can most definitely commend Wargaming, the super testers, even the community for bringing all these bugs to you guys' attention, and you actually going and fixing it so quickly. With the next-gen consoles that have entered the game, and Wargaming that have brought new additional updates and to accommodate them, what additional enhanced features could the community expect in the future, if you're willing to tell us, for the Xbox Series X, Series S, and for the PlayStation 5?
Yeah, there's not much I can share, but I will share what I can. We do plan to take advantage of the hardware, essentially. We did, in a way, with Xbox, we perhaps didn't unleash all the new technology that's available, but those who moved on to Series S and Series X, they should be enjoying better frame rates in all available resolutions. When it comes to light work, we plan to do something this year at least. I cannot be more concrete, unfortunately, at this time. For PlayStation, still the native client for PlayStation 5 is still a few months away. I think it shouldn't be further than summer. Although if I'm wrong, I will correct myself later. But yeah, unfortunately, PlayStation took us a bit of time. Cannot get into details of that, but we're getting there.
Due to the next-gen consoles that many players own already, how long will Wargaming be supporting the older gen consoles, the Xbox X, the Xbox One, and the PlayStation 4?
Honestly, as long as there are substantial numbers of players using them and playing our game. What is substantial, you ask? I really don't know at this point. I guess if percentages are like 20, I don't know, even 10. To be honest, there's no concrete strategy, but at this point and probably next year, those consoles are not a hindrance in our development, because when it comes to network interaction, there are really no issues with all the consoles. And when it comes to graphics, we can just have different settings for different clients. The older consoles, the game on all the consoles will not get particularly prettier, or if it will, it won't by much. But the existing gameplay that you get, it should last us a few years.
I believe many players will be very happy to hear that they can actually play the game for 3 or even 5 more years, depending on the amount of people that will be playing the game on that specific consoles. So that's the one bonus, at least for all the players out there that still don't have the new gen consoles yet.
We're absolutely not looking to force anyone to switch generations.
Still, will spotting or assisted spotting damage be rewarded down the line in the future for console? As you know, at the moment, we don't really have any spotting damage or spotting ribbons.
That's possible, but that's not something that we have in our internal roadmap yet. It doesn't mean that it won't come sooner or later, but there are a few more pressing issues, like, as you know, we're going to have a carrier event. We're going to have to collect a lot of data. Once the event is done, we're going to have to work on their permanent implementation. We're going to have more branches for researchable ships. We're probably going to have more commanders. There are probably going to be new modes. While spotting damage is definitely a useful tool, a useful visual for more experienced players, one would think that it would also motivate some more selfish players to help their team better. We can't say that correlates with our findings looking at the PC game, but nevertheless, we understand that it's an important and useful stat to have something to measure your performance on. So I cannot give you a definite no, but I cannot give you 100% yes yet. But it's interesting.
Well, on the 19th of January 2021, I actually noticed for the first time that the player support page was launched. Is there anything that you can tell us about this page and how it's actually used?
I'm actually a bit confused. You said 19th of January? We've actually had a player support page since the full release on April 16, 2018. I'm sorry, 2019. Maybe it wasn't very prominent. I guess maybe we didn't outright advertise it, but it was there. I even curated, yours truly curated its inception in a way.
Oh yes, most definitely, Phil. There's a lot of questions that is in the air at the moment with the community about CVs. I'd rather not poke with it because we know it's locked behind NDA, non-disclosed agreement, and so I'm not going to ask you anything about that.
I actually didn't prepare. Full disclosure here, I did not prepare. You, Rogue, just for our listeners, Rogue did send me the questions. I went in full unprepared mode, but I think this way it's also more honest.
Well, when it comes to people being reported for being AFK, how many times do they have to be reported until Wargaming says, okay, well, this guy's actually been AFK for so many times that you'll take action, likely ban them or suspend them?
We've actually checked with a few guys that been reported serial away from keyboarders. I don't know what you call them. A couple of guys, it turned out they just lived in countries where our servers, which are, there are not many servers that we have just a couple, but they just live so far away that their ping is too high and they get disconnected. While they do affect gameplay of the others, we cannot, in good conscience, restrict them from playing the game just because they are far from our servers. I had a guy from, I think it was Rwanda. I'm not even sure if we are officially there, but somehow he's able to connect, and if he is, I can't really punish him for not having the best internet, can I? I don't think we should. And when we look at cases of players leaving the games, and just at medians, that's about 2.5% of games have anyone leaving. There are actually more cases of people, I guess, dealing with some IRL troubles, like they're keeping online, but they have to do something away from their console. At the present moment, the only punishment such players get if they do not participate is they do not earn anything. We will think whether we need the system that the PC has. It's a good system. We will have to evaluate though if the player base is ready for those kinds of punishments yet. And maybe you are. It's right now it's just not the moment to make the judgment.
Phil, it was noticed during the inspection of the player support system that you can actually report clans. Would this mean that clans will be coming to World of Warships Legends in the near future?
That depends on how you define near future, but I think all I can say at this point about clans that there are plans for clans. Elf on the shelf. There are plans for clans for this year, and unless there are more issues brought on by Corona, like more serious than they are currently, because we are partly remote, partly in office, we're kind of scattered. It takes its toll time-wise and inter-team communication a bit, not harshly so, and I think we've adapted. So unless it becomes much worse, I think we're on track to have some clan stuff in 2021.
Well, Phil, there's a couple of community questions I want to discuss with you as well, and the first one is actually coming from the not-so-chosen one. And he's actually asking a very good question about the Bismarck itself, especially with the 105 secondaries that are in place. And if you divide the shell diameter by a fourth, it's supposed to pin the destroyers due to them only having 19 mils. But in actual fact, the shells are actually divided by 6. Is there any means that Wargaming is looking at to try and rectify this? To try and fix it, because it's now at the moment.
She is correct. Yeah, sorry for cutting you off. I just have the answer right here. He is correct. The 105s do not penetrate the 20mm, and we do indeed have plans to deal with that. But we'll only share the exact measures once we're closer to their implementation. But it's not going to be too far off.
The next question comes from the Bloody Hound 90. And he'd like to know if there's actual historic camos that are coming, in the near future.
Wink, wink. There's probably going to be some historical camos as soon as the next update, so we get an exclusive. We have promised to have some historical camos available to be converted from paint, and that's going to be the very first batch. I cannot speak to when we're going to have more, but wait for the patch notes, or I'm not entirely sure when this is going to be published. If it's after the 28th, the people will already have known, but I think we are slowly but surely delivering on that. When it comes to historical camos for higher tier ships, there are also plans in motion for 2021.
There was this additional question that the Bloody Hound 90 was asking, and it was, when would we be seeing cross-chat? And cross-play will be included as well. When can we expect that to be included into the game?
Cross-chat for Xbox newer consoles should be back very soon. Again, follow our news. Currently, the only platforms that cannot communicate with others are Series S and Series X players. They unfortunately cannot hear PlayStation players from either of PlayStation consoles. We're going to deal with that again very soon. Divisions will still take some time, but I believe 2021 as well. And again, I'm sorry I'm painting with such broad strokes, but I have to manage expectations. If I give you particular months for any of the features, which unless this is a feature that's implemented just waiting in the wings, we could face some regret when it doesn't happen. So sorry if I'm being too cautious.
D-Rips, a PlayStation player, is asking, as the Azure Lane, the Warhammer, and the Transformers content has been so successful, is there any possibility of the next crossover, and what can we expect in the future for the next one?
I cannot give any details, but we are looking at more opportunities for collaborations. But I'm afraid that's all I can say.
Phil, the next question, well, again, it's from D-Rips from PlayStation, and he wants to know, how does the matchmaker work in random battles? Is it truly random? Or is there an algorithm underlining that works as a basic SBMM for balancing? Or is this the same for all game modes?
I can describe the matchmaker. So for random, during the probably first few seconds, it tries to mirror the teams by ship types completely. For example, if we have 3 destroyers, 3 battleships, and 3 cruisers on one side, once a particular time threshold is crossed, it will allow the extra battleships or the extra destroyers to be replaced with cruisers as the most neutral of ship types. If we have legendary legendary battles, if they are the top tier, those would be considered legendary tier battles. Basically, what can happen is that your destroyer can be faced with a cruiser or even with a battleship, which usually doesn't happen for tier 7 and lower battles. Plus, considering that we're not in the infancy of legendary tier, but I guess we're in adolescence now. More and more legendary ships are appearing. There are still a few things that can be improved. We are waiting for, I guess, a couple more projects so that the legendary roster is, well, it can never be complete, but it's balanced, just ship type wise, between destroyers, cruisers, and battleships. Once that happens, we can probably introduce, we might probably introduce a bit stricter matchmaking for legendary tier, but otherwise it is exactly random, because we do not look at players' win rates or skill, or would not look at which maps they played or how successful they are during any particular time. Unfortunately, I think it was tested a few years ago, and those additional parameters are introduced can take significantly longer to find a game, and your 30-minute session can turn into a 50-minute session, and that can actually be illustrated pretty well by what you see in current matchmaking situation in ranked battles above rank 5. Because a lot of people still want to play destroyers, and there's a 1 destroyer limitation. There are many games without any destroyers at all, and since it is strictly mirroring, even 5 ships versus 5 ships, it can still be quite a long wait for people to get there. However, it also, I guess it's also, to be fully honest here, considering it's pretty hard to get past rank 5, there are not that many people in that queue, and a lot of you guys burn out. But that's the difference between strict mirror and what we have in random. There are no deep secrets there, nothing too special, just classes and some time thresholds. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The Azure Lane commanders that are in the game, them being Japanese, will there be a possibility to include maybe subtitles into the game, or even make them English?
Azure Lane commanders could have either English voiceovers or English subtitles. To be honest, we didn't we didn't look to implement either of those because the players that consume that content that like Azure Lane franchise and like their implementation in our game, most of them like commanders as they are. Secondly, I don't think we have a subtitle system in place, so that would be a new game system. I'm not saying it's not possible, considering we can relay commands in our chat bubble on the left side of the heads up display. To be honest, it's not something we look to implement because simply we don't get enough demand for it. Like, you can compare the calls for bringing in carriers to calls for giving subtitles to Azure Lane commanders. When it comes to voiceovers, I mean, the factor that brings many players to get those commanders is their original voices, which are the same as Azure Lane. Those actresses, those voices are valuable, so we would not want to override them with anything. And I believe that's part of our collaboration to keep the original.
Well, Phil, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. It has been a real honor, and I really hope that our listeners, from the comments that will come in after this, that we can possibly do this again in the future with you.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope this was candid enough. And sometimes I tend to go on tangents. Sorry, but I guess that's because of my major in languages. I'm not a mathematician, so I'm not always to the point like I am now. And sure, I would do this in the future. Seems the format works. Please leave your comments to all the players, and we could probably even manage some giveaways next time when you invite Kane or Sailing Robin or whomever, or Prince Blip, of course. How could I forget the great singer of the team? Thank you, Rogue. Can I be cheesy for a second?
Oh, of course, no, go for it.
Okay, guys. I hope your hopes and dreams to realize in 2021. It's a big upgrade toward 2020 for as many of you as possible, and of course, turn the tide.